You're listening to the Empowered Whistleblower syndicated radio show, hosted by talk show host, speaker, author, and coach Dawn Marie Westmoreland, and broadcast on WPVM FM LP 103.7, the voice of Asheville. If you're looking to become more resilient, courageous, and empowered, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome back. Is there ever a time that we should address the division in the United States and in the world? I think there is. And I have a guest expert from Tampa, Florida area, Chip Webster, who's written some books and he's done some pretty big things to help bridge the division out there. Hey, Chip, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Let's find out a little bit more about you. I know what you're out there doing. It's great things. Why is it so important to address the division we have, not only in the United States, but in the world?
Well, you're either growing, that is getting better, or getting worse. There is no standing still. And if you listen to the news, read all the media, listen to the so-called experts, we're getting further and further divided. And it's not sustainable. We have to stop this deterioration of our trust of each other and the trust of the nation and turn it around. So wrote the book Unity and Service, A Pathway to Responsible Citizenship, as a starting point to get people to think about what's their role as a citizen, what's their role as a voter, and what's their role in terms of being part of the solution rather than the problem. And I'm passionate about it. My background, I did a lot of work in CEO peer groups, running peer groups. I've run businesses. I've started businesses. I started in a large corporation that some of you may remember called Sears, and was able to watch the beginning of the end of that. I left in the 70s. It was obvious they stopped focusing on the customer and started focusing on the bureaucracy. And I think that's part of what we're suffering with here too, is the bureaucracy has more power than the citizen. And but back to the focus is the only people that can change it is us. Democracy is a do it to ourselves project. And if we don't like where it is, it's up to us to change it in the ballot box.
Good point. Now, we were talking before the show about the military in general, and you're an advocate for the military. Can we get into that?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I was involved before COVID, and so I started traveling with a thing called STAR, which is a organization in Tampa working with MacDill and the special ops. And as these officers retired, we would hold meetings and help them transition into civilian life. And what was so interesting to me is, you have this Rambo view of what the military is like, and then there's this reality. And I found, especially in special ops, these people were brilliant. They were not violent by choice. They knew what to do, but they didn't want to have to fight. They wanted to do the right thing. And I started reflecting on these people are better citizens because they've been in the military and they've been part of something bigger than themselves. And then I started thinking about the CCC and WPA, which Roosevelt had during the Depression, where people could go to work and build national parks and roads and dams. And I saw a way for every citizen, turn 18, graduate from high school, go work on a project for a year in a different place than you, with people different than you. And that will begin to break down these barriers that, quite frankly, I think a lot of politicians and certainly the media likes to exacerbate because it sells advertising. And that's pretty tragic.
So what are your thoughts? Should we encourage people to join the military?
I think we should encourage people to join the military, but I think we ought to have everybody serve for a year. It doesn't have to be military, just go out and work on projects. General McChrystal has articulated it very well. The debate seems to be, should it be mandatory or should it be voluntary? Well, voluntary sounds great, but right now, less than about 0.5% of the kids who are in the age of draft age go and volunteer for AmeriCorps. We
Yes.
have 1% of the population in the military. I was listening to, actually yesterday, to a McChrystal recording where he talked about how many people don't know anybody that has served in the military or is serving in the military, because it's only 1% of the population. And,
Hmm.
freedom isn't free, and we all have to be engaged to maintain it. And that's the way we'll break down the barriers and have people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. We've become so self-absorbed. All you have to do is watch behavior, and people. When I walk a lot, and I can remember walking in Chicago in the 70s, and everybody says hi to each other. Now you walk in places and they turn their heads, they put their earphones on, and they're in their little cocoon, and that doesn't build a country. That doesn't build a society. And so we have to get out of that, break down those barriers, and learn to trust. And I don't know any other way than working shoulder to shoulder and elbow to elbow on a project that's bigger than ourselves.
Chip, well said. And serving in the Air Force 20 years, I totally get it, understand. And some days I miss those days in the Air Force where, a lot of times you didn't like the next person or didn't respect them, but for the common good, you work together to get things done. And I love that very much.
Thank you. And I think also in the book, I talk about what does a responsible citizen do? They vote. They don't vote for the party. They vote for the best person who's going to put nation ahead of party. They get involved in projects. And no matter what age you are, I'm 79, and next week I'm going to go build reef balls for Tampa Bay Watch. Whatever you can do physically, mentally, but you got to get out of your cocoon and go be with people different than yourselves and work on a project bigger than yourself. I was on the board at Central Florida Urban League for a number of years, and the leader did such a great job of breaking down what needed to happen in the community, and it was education, employment, and entrepreneurship. And ultimately, entrepreneurship is the great ticket to independence. And I put together some other programs, but the most important thing we're talking about right now is national service, national culture. I don't know if you've ever heard the statement, culture eats strategy every time. Our culture is eating us, and you either have a culture of positive or negative, and that comes from the top. We have to elect people who are not divisive. We have to elect people who are long-term putting the country ahead of their egos. And I'm not talking about any particular president or congressman, because they all have their strengths and weaknesses. I'm apolitical on this project. It's not about left, right, or center. It's about the country.
I appreciate what you're saying. We have a lot of division with the different age groups, and being that my background's HR, I've been in HR 32 years, and I see a lot of division myself, even though I'm a consultant. The different ages, how do you get them to work together better and understand each other? Because they're so different. I mean, Chip, for example, I went to the bank yesterday and I met a guy, and he told me he was 33 years old because we struck up a conversation. And when he asked what I did for a living, I said, HR, I'm a consultant. And then he started talking about work balance, work and, that mental health balance. And I'm like, and of course, that's when I asked him, may I ask your age? He said, I'm 33. You never heard that for the older people. I'm the last year, the baby boomers, that's 1960.
I'm the first year, so.
Are you the first year? Why?
The bookends.
That's super cool, Chip. I'll be darned. Yeah, it's a different world than what you and I grew up with.
Well, yeah, and it's it's not reality. I mean, I was talking to a high school graduate this weekend and, well, what do you want to do?
Mhm.
Well, I want to do something that, makes me happy. Did anybody ever think about, I want to add value? What makes things happen is I have a talent.
Mhm.
I do something for you. You have a talent. You do something for somebody else. And we all work together and we get compensated so I can buy the car from the guy that doesn't want all my chickens for the car. And the guy who's selling the cars, goes to the grocery store and buys groceries. And that's capitalism, and that's what's worked so well and raised more people out of poverty than any other process. We live in the greatest nation in the history of the world. There are fewer poor people, fewer people starving.
Mhm.
And if you're starving in this country, it's because either you don't know where to go to get food or you're too lazy to go get it. And this whole idea of I want to be happy. No, I want to contribute. I want to make the world better by being a great mechanic on cars or being a great welder in the shipyard or being a CFO of a company and making sure the numbers are all right. But that we all are contributing together and we all need each other. That's what probably fewer people are saying. We need each other. And that's why breaking down these barriers, as I talk about 18-year-olds going and serving the country for the year, but as 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, we should all be volunteering. I think Habitat for Humanity is a wonderful program. I
Mhm.
have a good friend in San Francisco who's older than I am, and we talk fairly regularly, and he decided to go volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. So it was fabulous.
Great
They're building,
organization. Mhm.
yeah, and he you just feel better. So, I can remember when I was in retail, helping. I went to school at Drake and I worked in a Sears store in Des Moines, and all the farmers would come in on the weekends. And I worked in the tool department. I can remember, helping somebody do something with a tool or taking care of a problem and just feeling, hey, I helped this person.
Mm.
And then as running CEO peer groups, helping CEOs build their business, they worked with each other. It was a fabulous, it's called Vistage. It's a wonderful organization. Um, they all did better by working together. And that goes back to we need each other. I'm better. Hopefully, you and I are better off because of this conversation in the future.
Yeah, good book. Let's get into your book. You talk about unity and service. First of all, what is your book about? What would readers or listeners, if it's on audio, what would they get out of it? And also, where can they find it?
Well, it's Unity Service, a pathway to responsible citizenship. It's on Amazon. It's a series of essays that go through, it starts with a letter, open letter to the people of the country saying it's up to us to fix it. It's up to nobody, I guess I can't say this on this program, but in the essence of nobody's going to save us but us. It's up to us. If we're waiting for the politicians to fix us, wrong. It's the citizens who are going to fix us. Then it talks about why tribes exist, because we are tribal and that's how we survived. If you weren't a member of a tribe hundreds of thousands of years ago, you might be a good dinner for an animal that thought you might taste good versus in a tribe you could defend yourself
Mhm.
um, and then it's the most important thing that we do as a nation is we it's still self-defense and it's laws and it's not only self-defense from foreign enemies but it's defense from bad people in our country, which unfortunately there are bad people everywhere, but our job as a community is to protect each other from those people.
Yeah.
Then it's to create, so I have essays about that. And then I get into holding the media accountable, uh, role of a responsible citizen, um, putting together groups. I'm fortunate to be a member of about 4 or 5 different virtual and in-person groups where we sit and talk about politics, and it's a wide range of political views. And I learned from that. And we should be able to hear each other. What's so interesting now is people will say, he's a Republican, he's a Democrat, he voted for Trump, he voted for Biden. And then you add all these other nuances to it. It's called stacking. So if I voted for Trump, you think I'd be not into recycling, not into saving, I mean, all these other things, or vice, if you were voted for Biden, you were for open border and no rule of law. Well, those aren't true. We voted for whoever we thought was best. It's always it's always the tallest pygmy, unfortunately, in so many of these campaigns. The best of the worst, but it doesn't mean that everything else that you would follow is true. And that breaks down. So we don't want to talk to people. I have friends who believe differently than I do politically, and they've kind of walked away from the relationship. And I think that's tragic, because we, as a democracy, have to be able to talk to each other, because democracy is compromise. And that's why putting nation ahead of party is so important. So the essays kind of walk us through that. And then I talk about national service. And as a part of the book, I've added the Gettysburg Address, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. It's in the book. So you can take time to study that and understand what's the basis. But there is a call to action, and the call to action is to get involved, to support the idea of required national service. That's the big, hairy, audacious goal and the big ask.
I like it personally, just knowing enough about the military. And we were talking beforehand, a lot of people go in the military because they don't have other choices. Maybe they come from humble backgrounds. I grew up in a very small one stoplight town, and I thought, oh my gosh, I want to do better than this. I want to travel. I want to get an education. I want to meet people who think differently than me. And I congratulate you and thank you, Chip, for talking about the elephant in the room. I know what you're talking about. We hear it every day. He voted for Trump. He voted for Biden. He voted for, it's crazy, Kamala. It's just crazy, because we can't all find commonality. And that really sounds what it's all about.
Yes. It's finding that common ground, being part of something bigger than us, and saving democracy. Democracy doesn't just happen. You have to work for it and work on it. And every one of us, I use the example, this is like a big public company. The United States is like a big public company, and all of us have one share. The wealthy people, they still have one share. The poor people have one share. And it's up to us to exercise our rights, our responsibilities. It's not rights, it's more responsibilities to keep the country moving in the right direction, to break down barriers. We aren't perfect. We spend so much energy on trying to have a better past. It's ridiculous. We cannot unbury Wounded Knee. We can't unslave slavery. We can't, but we can learn from all our mistakes and make it better in the future. But we spend so much energy trying to fix the Jim Crow laws. They were awful. We learned from it. Now what do we do so it doesn't happen again?
Chip, what do you say to people who are always complaining all the time, whether it's about politics, whether it's about religious views or things like that? I mean, how do we get the people to be more open-minded so that we can all either tolerate or accept each other?
Well, a great method is when somebody's talking is just say, tell me more. Tell me more. How does that, just keep having a listening to them and letting them vent, and then asking questions about, well, if we keep doing it that way, what's the result going to be? It's 5 years from now. If we keep doing the same thing, what's the result going to be? Many times they'll start thinking, well, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to splinter. Okay, so if we're going to splinter, what would be the best course to keep that from happening? So it's just, I guess, having a curious mind and asking questions and letting people feel heard. Remember, people can't hear you until they feel as though they've been heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a place to start, is just be curious and ask questions and let them completely uh, dispense all their venom, all their negative feelings. And eventually, most people will come around to going, well, gee, I guess if I keep feeling this way, it's not going to work out well for us.
Very, very good point. And I have to share with you, in the past week, I hung out with two friends, one who mentioned how bad the world has become, how rough and tough it is. And then another friend, very, very optimistic, very extroverted, is, always positive. It's a great world, focuses on great. What are your thoughts on that?
The people that are Pollyannish, or is that what the question is, or
Is
just
it
the
a rough
division?
world or is it a great world?
It's a wonderful world, because we have lots of choices, but we're responsible for our actions and for the choices we make. And people who are negative see the glass half full, and people who probably see the glass half empty, and neither one is totally right. I mean, we're in a very difficult political place right now in the world. I just watched a video of the landing devices that the Chinese are building to invade Taiwan. Satellite views of some very creative landing operations. There's always been war. Tell me when there wasn't a war or threat of war in the history of man.
Good
Tell me
point.
when there was when wasn't there a famine? So you can say this is bad times, but here's what I'm going to do to make it better for me and for my community and for my country. But just whining about it, there's three kinds of people. This also came from my partner in Black Mountain that I told you about. There's people that watch things happen. There's people that make things happen, and there's people who wonder what happened. And only the people that make things happen are gonna change the direction. And we just need to know that it's our responsibility to the next generations to leave it better than we found it, and to be, peace through strength. We have to have that strength so we aren't going to get invaded. You can't, wishful thinking or hope is not a strategy. And so hoping that, if you go back to, I think it was Lincoln, he gave a speech before he ran for president to a group in Springfield, Illinois, where he talked about, we're not going to be invaded by foreign nations that take us over. We're gonna commit suicide by not taking care of ourselves. It's a very loose translation of what he said, not nearly as articulate, but the point is that what is it? Somebody said the fish rots from the head down, head first. So, putting the right people in office, it's our responsibility to let people run for office and not make it a torture chamber. Some of the things that are said about people running for office or being vetted for judge is just horrible. And many times, most of the time, it's just a lie. Um, we've got to clean up our act and hold each other accountable for being responsible citizens.
And I like that word, accountability. I'm all about accountability because I'm a life coach, but I'm also an HR consultant. How do we hold them accountable, Chip?
How do we hold them accountable?
How do we hold them accountable?
Well, when I, also coaching CEOs, it was before life coaches were created. We called ourselves facilitators. But getting them to have clear views of what they want to accomplish, and then holding them accountable for doing what they say they're going to do. And in my role, nobody would hold the CEO accountable. So I was called by my CEOs priest, rabbi, and paid pain in the ass, because it was my job to come in once a month and say, you were going to acquire this company, or you were going to find a new CFO who could actually count. And where are we on this? And I think the culture we have, I think if you go back to World War II, I've got to believe the culture was holding each other accountable for saving gas, for bringing in the papers, the tin cans,
Good point.
whatever we did to keep the country going. So I think having a culture of accountability is I think what we're talking about. And that is by holding each other accountable for, I gotta tell you, when I hear these ads on the radio about you didn't pay your taxes, but we can get you out of it,
Oh my goodness.
it's awful. You know who's paying for it? You and
All
I.
of us.
And then you ran up your credit cards and now we're gonna get you out of debt. I was in bankruptcy court. I had a piece of property that I inherited and the person paying the bill stopped paying and I had to go to bankruptcy court to get it solved.
Mm,
But I had to listen to all the cases before me. This is in Riverside, California.
mhm.
And this couple, you bought a new car, you bought a new refrigerator, you bought this, blah, 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 and then you declared bankruptcy. Sorry, but
Yeah.
I think, I think holding each other accountable starts with telling the truth. I just thought of that when we're talking about it. And for holding people accountable for their acts. And bankruptcy court, yeah, that's a great thing because we don't put people in jail if they're in debt, but if they are totally irresponsible, there's got to be a price beyond I declared bankruptcy and I don't owe anybody anything.
I'm with you there. I am totally with you there, Chip. I know people who have run up credit debt and then they went to bankruptcy court, and I'm like, wow, I've gone through challenging times in my life, divorce and, being in debt, but I've never considered going to bankruptcy court. And it's just, to me, it seems like a cop out unless there's a very valid reason for it. And I'm sure there are. Yes.
And it shows character. My next lunch is with a good friend who owned a lot of real estate. And when the economy went way south, he was really upside down.
Mm.
And I said, have you thought about bankruptcy? He said, no. I made these deals. I'm going to go through with them. And he did. He made it through, reducing his life, selling his house, doing whatever he needed to do to pay off those debts. And he's such a man of character. And that's kind of what we're missing.
I dated a guy many years ago who had incredible health issues and owed over $100,000. He paid every penny back. And I'm like, sometimes he lived hand to mouth. And I thought, wow, that's character. That is really character. Well, we're down to less than a minute. How can people find you, reach out to you if they want to get to know you better?
I have a website, unityandservice.org. And my email address is chip@unityandservice.org. And I'd be delighted to talk to anybody. And I'd love to have people go to the website and learn what I'm trying to accomplish and leave comments or, send me an email and we can talk further. This is the most important thing I believe our country can do at this point in time.
Well, thank you so much, Chip. To our listeners, stay empowered, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much.